I am not showing you how to paint this on a headquarters, not even on a Land Raider, and not on a full squad. I'm going to be teaching you on a Helldrake. And the biggest plus of this entire painting technique is that it requires zero airbrushing. I'm starting this out with a black primer, just straight rattle can, nothing fancy. Starting with pure black gives you the most contrast when you push the highlights all the way up to white. I'm going to grab my dark warm gray and a dry brush. I'm sure it's probably better to use something fancy, but I find makeup brushes to fit the bill and work really well. For this, what you really want to do is get that dark warm gray into your bristles, work it around, and then remove all the excess. Once you've got it to where there's barely anything coming off that brush, go ahead and jump over to your model. What you want to do at this point is lightly drag that brush across your panel. This is going to leave that paint on the sharp raised edges and leave your recesses nice and dark. Once that initial pass is done, we're going to come back with bright neutral gray. We're going to do the same thing with this one. We just want to come back in, get a little bit of that on the raised areas. At this point, you're going to be getting some really nice definition. You can see the difference here on the left side versus the right side. At this point, what we've got is a pretty good looking grayscale model. Now it's time to come in with that pop of color and make it really vibrant. My first step for this process is Bold Pyro Red. Again, this is going to be a dry brush. What I'm trying to do is get some light spill from specific areas, the eyes, the engines, the mouth, and get that around it. And then later on, I'll come in with my brush and actually fill in those areas. You don't need a nice solid pass the first time. You can always come back and work on these areas again. It's way easier to add more than to come back and try and pull some out or add some gray and black back in to try and correct. Overall, this entire process is really beginner friendly, but it does take a lot of time. So put on some music, grab a drink, sit back, relax, just enjoy the process. Here's the transition from the dry brushing to the actual painting. I'm going to go ahead and draw a series of patterns on these wings. I'm going to do this in the recessed areas, leaving the upper surfaces that gray color, making sure I don't spill onto it. I want this to be more of like an internal fire coming out rather than something that's on top. So by leaving those ridges and all the trim on top, that same gray color, you're kind of selling the effect that this is coming from inside. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. You could do full flames, you could do just patches and splotches, but I would avoid getting too consistent and too pattern focused, unless you're really willing to commit to that across the entire model. Another thing to emphasize here is we are going over black, and you're probably not going to get an opaque color on that first pass, which is totally fine. Just come back in once you're done with your first pass and just fill it back in. That'll give you that nice solid opaque color. From there, I'm grabbing my orange and coming back in, putting this inside of my Bold Pyro Red areas, making sure to leave that Bold Pyro Red showing around the edges. You want to sell this effect by making it darker on the outside, working to a brighter value as you go to the center. Again, not a highly technical paint job, but it will take you time. Sit back, relax, enjoy the process. From there, I'm going to gold and yellow and working inside of my orange blocks. Again, making sure to leave that orange showing around the edges. It's okay if you lose that edge on a couple areas, but you need that transition or else it's going to be way too stark and just read wrong. And again, go ahead and to the best of your ability, come in, lay down that yellow in a single pass, leave it alone. Once you're done with the entire model, come back and fill in any of those areas that aren't opaque. From there, I'm going right to my Bold Titanium White. It's a pretty big jump. You could make an intermediate step on this one if you wanted to, but since this is a tabletop army, I wanted it to be really poppy and read really well at 3 feet. In order to mount this guy to the base, my client decided he wanted something a little bit different than the standard flight base, and he sent me some beautiful fire. So we're going to use that. Obviously, or at least I hope it's obvious, if you are using that standard flight base, don't do this. Don't cut your model up. At this point, I'm going to transition over to painting the fire, and these are the colors I'm using. Again, pretty much the exact same stuff that I used on the model itself, keeping this a little bit simpler and a little more consistent. The biggest thing to think about when you're doing the fire here is that fire is the brightest at its source. So what we're going to have in this scenario is white hot fire shooting out of this Helldrake's mouth. It's going to hit the ground, dissipate, and as it goes to the rear of this model, you're going to get a lot darker values because it's a lot less intense heat, and you're also getting a lot of the ash, the smoke, all the debris, and that's just going to give you a much darker look overall. So in order to sell this effect, what you want to do is put that white all the way up at the top and at the front, and then come back in, put yellow. We're going to basically reverse the colors that we used. So yellow next to the white, and then from the yellow, it's going to bleed into the orange. From the orange, it's going to bleed into the red. From the red, it's going to bleed into that dark warm gray, and then probably into black. Then what you're going to want to do to sell the effect that it's hotter in the center is to come back in, taking your darker color and overbrushing or dry brushing onto the lighter color. That's going to leave the lighter color in the recess where the fire is going to be hottest, and the outside of it is going to be that darker color, giving you a nice transition. Just try and pay attention to it, and as you're doing this overbrush, dry brush, whatever you want to call it, try not to get that into the recesses, because once you get into the recesses, you're going to have to come back in, work on that brighter value, reinsert that, and then try and blend it back in again. A little bit of caution and a little bit of care is going to save you a lot of time. I'm going to use a little bit of super glue, get this thing mounted on my cork base topper. And then what I'm going to do is grab some skeletons that I've got and add some of those bits around the base just to kind of sell the effect. And that's what you got, guys. A lot of dry brushing, a little bit of actual brush work, but no airbrush, no super advanced techniques. It's really beginner friendly. You just got to be willing to commit the time and the effort into it. The really beautiful thing about this paint job is it plays really well across an entire army. Brings everything together, and honestly, it saves you a lot of time on Thousand Suns. This is an entire Thousand Suns army, and I don't have to worry about going and hand painting all the trim. Sure, I've got to go in and paint these little symbols in like 4 colors, so it takes time, but it's not as difficult. It's just time consuming. So if you've ever wanted to try out a fire paint scheme, go give this one a try. It's pretty easy. It's just going to require time and patience, but the biggest thing, it's intro friendly. You don't have to have an airbrush. Just grab your rattle can for your base primer and then go to town. If you enjoyed this one, if it was helpful, go ahead and hit like, subscribe. I'm looking to ramp up the channel, so you should see a lot more content starting to pop up. Have a good day, guys. Go out there, paint, have fun.